One of the extraordinary things about Judaism is that it makes the past present. So it's not just in our minds. I imagine a piece of the past. I think, what would that person say? But Judaism actually says, no. You were there. You were a slave who came out of Egypt. You were someone who was standing right there at Mount Sinai receiving Torah. On this holiday of Shavuot, we're taught that it's not just our ancestors 3,000 years ago who were there and witnessed it, but that the souls of the unborn, us, we were there too. And think about the implication of having been there. If we're there, then we get to say, this is what it meant to me. We get to engage with other relatives, other ancestors, and say, what was it like for you? That real sense of a religious imagination that allows ourselves not just to think about, but to truly transport our souls, to allow ourselves to enter the past and the past to move to the forward with our own integrity. That's what results in a religious voice that honors the past and brings in our present. We each receive Torah in our own way. The rabbis taught that everyone heard it according to their own capacity. So when we're standing there, we receive it in our own way. And then we bring that experience to our discussions with the past and re-experience it hopefully every single year. So I want to ask you actually to do something which isn't easy. I want you to engage in that act of religious transformation by taking yourself back. Take yourself back to Sinai. Picture being there. Picture receiving Torah. Picture what your ancestors may have said to you. Because when you were there and you hear those voices, it informs you in ways differently than reading about it in a book would do. In Judaism, we bring the past into the present. And in some ways, the Yizkor prayers, the memorial prayers, also bring the past alive. We carry with us all of our loved ones. And 4 times a year, and it makes sense that you do it during holiday times when you really miss your loved ones, you ask them to come back, you remember them, you let them speak to you, you dialogue with them. Judaism is the ability to creatively engage our souls such that the past and the present merge into a moment. And I know that there are people who are watching who aren't of the Jewish faith, and that enriches us. It's a universal shared value that we can link to our past and to our ancestors, and I invite you to do that as well. Whereas I may have stood at Sinai with my ancestors, you stood in so many places from your past, and it gives you a richness that you get to allow to define who you are. Are you thinking about being there? Are you allowing yourself to transport back? Are you allowing your relatives who you'll reflect upon in Yizkor to whisper that still small voice into your soul? Picture them. And then ask questions. What do you want to know about the past? What do you want to know about their experience? Might they tell you about what they went through? And I really want to ask so many of them, what would you tell me about this moment? This odd moment in my history that I've never experienced where we're shut in, where we're anxious, where we're watching loss while also unsure of what to do. And as we explore the experience of the past, again, not from a book, but through talking, through letting the past live, the past and the present merge, and we walk together towards a future where I am informed with that wisdom. Shavuot takes me back to Mount Sinai. Yizkor weaves in the voices of my past, and it whispers into my heart, what do you have to tell me now? And I imagine that were I to go back to Sinai, there'd be a few people who I would seek out particularly if everyone was there. Because they've so touched me through my learnings, through my studies, I would want specifically to ask them. There's one person I want to talk to this year. I want to talk to Ruth. By the way, I want to talk to Ruth for a couple reasons. First, she's the Shavuot holiday reading, so it's appropriate to talk to Ruth. But more than that, I want to talk to Ruth because Ruth wasn't born Jewish. Ruth was a Moabite. And I think that to teach that everybody who's joined our people also stood at Sinai is an important message of inclusion, of learning from people with really different points of view. I think that learning from someone like Ruth, who had a different background and a different type of upbringing, might actually give me deeper wisdom as I seek to hear her voice. So I pull in all of these voices, Ruth, ancestors, relatives, and I ask, what do you have to teach me? By the way, do what I did preparing this sermon. Sit and ask yourself, what are the voices of the past bringing to me right now? And I want to see how your answers contrasted or reflected the answers that I've come up with as I've tried to humbly delve into that past and let it whisper to me. Lesson number one that I think my ancestors and Ruth would share with me is that we've been through tough times before and we've made it through. Ruth would tell about living through famine, how her husband's family had to leave their land, come to Moab for food. She'd tell us about loss. She lost a husband, a father-in-law, a brother-in-law. I think that other people standing at Sinai would tell her that they too knew loss in different times of history. They would tell her that they too knew deprivation. They knew slavery. They knew uncertainty. They knew displacement. And as I hear those stories of suffering, it's not that I wallow in that pain. It's that I hear them say, and I moved forward. By the way, we don't deny or diminish pain and suffering. We're not surprised by it. It's part of life. And our honesty in facing it is, I think, part of what makes us emotionally whole. We're able to be real. But as we sit with our pain, we also have awareness that we walk through it. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, you are with me. Both God is with us and loved ones are with us. Ruth would tell me about how she clung to the love of her mother-in-law, Naomi, about how she found new love, unexpected. Who would imagine that Ruth would have found a husband in this strange land? In trying to dissuade her from coming, her mother-in-law Naomi says, there are no more husbands. Conventional wisdom says a woman needs a husband in order to be economically secure. Ruth said, no. My love for you is that which is sustaining me. As I listen to the voices of the past telling me to go forward and how they went forward, I find my strength. As I go back to Sinai, as I listen to Ruth, as I listen to my ancestors reassuring me it'll be okay, we've done this before, I find the ability to take one more step. And I want to ask you, as I'm bringing you back to that place and to those peoples, think of what those voices were for you. Who's telling you it will be okay to keep on going forward? Let those voices sit with you right now. Lesson one is the lesson of will be okay. Lesson two that I believe Ruth is speaking to us, as well as other ancestors and relatives, is that kindness holds the key to survival, to coping, and to thriving. Throughout the book of Ruth is the word chesed, love, loving kindness. It's kindness that's extended without expectation of it coming back. Ruth's essence is kindness. I think she'd tell me, Nat, it's kindness that got me through the tough times. It connected me to others. I think she'd tell me that when she went to Judea, she and her mother-in-law were destitute. They had nothing. And they went out to the fields of those who had harvested, and they gleaned that which fell. It was the kindness of others that let them survive. But kindness was so deep in that moment. Note that it was Ruth that went out and not her mother-in-law Naomi. Why? Maybe she didn't want Naomi to be embarrassed. Kindness is when we can see that which pains another person, and even without asking, act in a way that's sensitive to that. Maybe she felt that Naomi wasn't strong enough to go and glean all day. Kindness is the ability to see where needs are and act to them. It is kindness that sustains us, and people notice that kindness. Kindness ripples. It does pay forward. Boaz saw this woman so kind to his mother-in-law. It began the sparks of love. Kindness changes everything. And Naomi, when she saw that Ruth and Boaz had a little something going, that Boaz recognized her, hatches this daring plan. Go down to the threshing floor, uncover his feet. Who would do such a thing? Naomi's kindness went out to her daughter-in-law, Ruth, as she came alive through extending kindness to others. Kindness, chesed, is not only that which allows us to emerge from grief, but kindness is that which transforms fragility into confidence. Kindness is that which gives life purpose. Kindness is that which changes our attitude as we're going through tough times. This lesson from Ruth, from our ancestors, has been guiding us. It's what Anna captured in her drash so beautifully. And on a certain level, those who've done okay during these times when nobody could be okay are those who've defined themselves by kindness, big and small. Those who've bought groceries for others, those who've made masks, those who couldn't go out for groceries, who reached out to friends, those who could help in big ways, medical professionals, those who work at shelters and other essential services. Those are the pieces of kindness that inspire and what I pray will define our times as we look back. So as you prepare for Yizkor, as you stand at Sinai, think of those voices of people who taught you kindness. What were their lessons? What would they say to you right now? Hold on to their legacy and let your kindness then blossom in ways you couldn't imagine. Lesson 3 that I am certain Ruth would say to me. This one I'm certain. I think she would say that love changes everything. She intuitively understands that you cope with loss by love. The fact that she insisted on staying with her mother-in-law when everyone else said, go home, there's no life for you in Judea. You'll be discriminated against. It's not your home. You'll be separated from your family. Ruth knew the healing power of love and had the courage to embrace it despite every conventional wisdom that frowned upon her choice. And I hear her whispering, hold on to love. I hear my ancestors telling me that it was love and support of fellow human that let them get through the tough times. So many of us have held on to one another, even from a distance. And as you think about love, it's not just that love has helped us get through this, but I actually think that some of us, if we've allowed it, and others, if we allow it, have learned more about love than we ever have before. We've learned how to listen more carefully, how to be a little more patient, how to see things from another point of view, how to connect differently. And as you prepare for Yizkor, think about your loved ones and what they would teach you about love. Think about your ancestors standing at Sinai or wherever they may have been and the lessons that they may have given you about the power of love to transform. Lesson 4 is the lesson of gratitude. We are a people defined by gratitude. Ruth would tell us how grateful she was for a mother-in-law. The story that isn't written, that we write, is how much she must have learned so that her loyalty was so deep to her mother-in-law. What she must have felt in her home that created such comfort that she left her comfort because the comfort of love was so much deeper. She was so grateful to her mother-in-law. And Naomi would share her gratitude for Ruth. It's in the book. Wow. What a daughter-in-law you have who so loves you. Gratitude is what sustains us, the ability to name it, to say it. And I actually want you to say thank you. Thank you to your ancestors for what they've taught you. Thank you to your relatives for what they've given you. The ability to say thanks is part of our Jewish prayer book. That's every single day. Thank you, God, for nature, freedom, being created in the divine image, strength. Thank you for the amazing miracles that are with me every single day. I want you to think about your ancestors and relatives who taught you the power of saying thank you, who taught you how you can see blessings all around you. And at times of stress and difficulty, know that it's gratitude that gives us perspective to help see what has always been there. Hold on to gratitude. Finally, lesson 5. I believe that Ruth would tell me to adapt, to adjust, and to evolve. We don't think about it, but the story of Ruth is one of the most radically subversive stories that there can be. In the book of Deuteronomy, it says, stay away from the Moabites. They're dangerous. Don't marry them. Ruth was a Moabite. Wisdom got turned on its head. Assumptions were questioned. The fact that new realities started to occur where the Moabites mixed with the Judeans caused us to adapt how we viewed people whom we may have previously seen as enemies. Harsh judgments melted. We are needing to readjust how we think, to adapt. Think about those people in your lives who taught you to adapt, who taught you to think differently, who taught us that ideas need to change and evolve. The book makes a bold claim that from this Moabite woman comes King David. She's the great-grandmother of King David, who is seen to be the Messiah of our people. We have to rethink. We have to look with fresh eyes and hearts. And I hope that another piece of what the wisdom that we've received as we've gone through this pandemic is that we're looking at society and behaviors in ways we have been overlooking or rationalizing. We have indeed been confronted with economic injustice, inequality, with racial injustice, and environmental truths that require us to pivot and to change. Our historic legacy of ancestors and relatives who adapted, who saw things differently, who evolved, inform, and inspire us as we move forward. So many of your ancestors and relatives knew how to adapt to survive, standing with them at Sinai, standing with them during Yizkor, thinking about them lets us learn from their wisdom, internalize it, and bring our own voices. You were there. They are here. We have lessons from the past that are alive in our hearts and souls, fully present. Our past is our promise and our present. Our future is our history and our voices mingling with it. Our shared faith, which has grown and changed over the generations, is our inspiration. So I want you to take a moment and allow that wisdom to speak to you, to comfort you as you remember your loved ones, both from our history and from your lives. Listen to them whisper, because they will. They'll speak to you, and their wisdom will move you forward from strength to strength. I'll ask you